Are your people working hard but not reaching their full potential? The problem is not effort, it is development. At the Modern Observer Group, we transform workforce development into real performance. Our human-centered achievement programs help your team think better, communicate stronger, and execute at a higher level. That means higher employee engagement, stronger leadership, and measurable results across your organization. If you want a workforce that performs, leads, and delivers, it is time to invest in your people. Visit modernobserver.com and discover how the Modern Observer Group helps you build a workforce that wins.
Canada escalates the tariff war. Affordability tops Americans' concerns. The loss of a musical legend, and more. Welcome to the Raw Naked Truth. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, and here's the news you need to know. Canada on Tuesday announced retaliatory tariffs against the United States, matching dollar for dollar the 50% duties that President Donald Trump imposed over the weekend after a breakdown in trade talks. Ottawa's new tariffs encompass more than 700 U.S. goods and are worth about $20 billion, mirroring the size of Trump's latest import taxes on Canadian wine, cement, hockey sticks, and more. The counter tariffs range from 15% to 50% and target a wide array of Canadian imports from the U.S., including dairy, seafood, appliances, wood and paper products, and clothes. Among the most significant are 50% tariffs on American steel and aluminum, doubling the current rate. The duties on metals and wood were chosen to respond to previously imposed U.S. tariffs on steel, aluminum, lumber, and other products. The new tariffs are set to take effect September 8th. Canada also unveiled an additional $7.5 billion package to support businesses and workers being harmed by the U.S. tariffs. China rejected U.S. threats of secondary sanctions against countries and entities that continue trading with Iran. China's foreign ministry maintained Tuesday that its cooperation with Iran operates within international law and should not be disrupted. The U.S. Treasury announced sanctions on 60 individuals, entities, and vessels accused of involvement in trade with Iran. The initial list did not include Chinese financial institutions. China is the largest buyer of Iranian oil and is estimated to purchase about 80% of Iran's oil exports. Beijing stated that it opposes unilateral sanctions and would take measures to protect its interests. Iran also rejected the expanded U.S. pressure. The sanctions move comes as U.S. officials seek to further restrict Iran's access to international trade and finance. CIA Director John Ratcliffe traveled to Moscow Tuesday for meetings with Russian officials, according to people familiar with the trip. A U.S. Air Force C-17A transport aircraft was observed at a Moscow airport along with a U.S. diplomatic motorcade. Neither the U.S. nor Russian government disclosed the purpose of the visit or identified the officials Ratcliffe was meeting. The CIA declined to comment. The trip appears to be the first known visit to Moscow by a U.S. intelligence chief since then CIA Director William Burns met Russian officials and spoke with President Vladimir Putin in November 2021. Before the visit, the United States asked Ukraine to suspend strikes around Moscow, St. Petersburg, and some northern Russian territories during a period when a senior U.S. delegation would be traveling. A new report is warning that networks aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood have become deeply embedded in Canada, raising concerns that Islamist influence taking root north of the border could pose a broader threat to the U.S. and Western democracies. A report from the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy revealed ties between Muslim Brotherhood-aligned groups and Canadian democratic institutions, civil society, electoral politics, and higher education, demonstrating similarities with other activist movements in the West, a phenomenon some analysts have described as the Red-Green Alliance. Canada's challenge is not simply the presence of individual extremist voices or isolated institutional weakness. The report maps how interconnected ideological networks acquire legitimacy, institutional access, public funding, political influence, and protection from scrutiny. Charles Asher Small, the Research Institute's executive director, told Fox News Digital. Affordability is the runaway top concern for battleground Senate race voters heading into the midterms, and no other issue is even close, a massive grassroots survey found. Focus on affordability dwarfed all other issues that voters raised combined, including immigration, energy, healthcare, crime, education, and national security, according to Americans for Prosperity's Americans Unscripted report. Over 42,844 voters were sampled on the ground in the 7 top Senate races by Americans for Prosperity, a conservative advocacy group, via door knocks and other means. Pennsylvania recorded its first 2 deaths connected to measles in 35 years, the state health department announced Tuesday. Neither deceased person had received the measles vaccine. Approximately 92.5% of kindergarten-age children received the measles vaccine this year, down from 95.2% at the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year. At least 1 in 4 NFL players who died between 2016 and 2021 had CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma, according to a study released yesterday. Researchers caution that the study could be underestimating the extent of CTE in professional football players. The NFL Players Association said the findings should serve as a call to action across the entire football ecosystem. Dolly Parton, the Grammy-winning singer, songwriter, and actress whose larger-than-life persona and 6-decade career made her one of America's most beloved entertainers, died peacefully at her Nashville home after a bout with cancer, her family announced Tuesday. She was 80. The fourth of 12 children raised in rural Tennessee, Parton sold over 100 million records on the strength of hits like Jolene and I Will Always Love You, starred in the hit movie 9 to 5, and built Dollywood into one of the country's most visited theme parks. Parton was an inspirational figure to many, often focusing on forgiveness and prayer in interviews. President Trump ordered all American flags flown at half-mast for a week, saying there has never been anyone like her and never will. She had faced health setbacks following the death of her husband Carl Dean in March 2025 and canceled a planned Las Vegas residency. Her family asked for donations to the Imagination Library in lieu of flowers. That's the Raw Naked Truth for August 26, 2026. Remember to like and subscribe to the Raw Naked Truth wherever you listen to podcasts. You can catch every episode of the Raw Naked Truth Daily News Brief, as well as our sister podcast, Carnivore Radio, with news analysis and commentary, and the rest of the Xvadio Podcast Network at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech. We'll see you next time.